Hello and welcome to The Left Wing. Well, we are here in the sun near the Stade de Fauvet where the Ireland squad trained this morning and near where Andy Farrell named his team to play New Zealand in Saturday's World Cup quarter-final. Unchanged team, lads, so just two changes on the bench. Joe McCarthy and Jimmy O'Brien in there. Mack Hansen is in.
Unchanged, but quite surprising. Mack Hansen, the mood music, has been fairly worried all week about Mack Hansen's calf and whether he make it back. We were at training here yesterday, Sinead, and he wasn't there. Sorry, he was there. He was up at the back of the stand. He came down and sat in the dugout for a little while, but it looked like he wasn't going to train at all. Keith Earls looked like he was in the frame to play, but he's picked up or maybe not picked up an injury, but his hamstring has not cleared up in time. Mack Hansen wasn't at the vision access portion of training this morning. He obviously must have done something today to convince them to put him onto the wing, but Earls has been ruled out. He's in. Jimmy O'Brien is on the bench, and it's Wednesday. It's an early team announcement this week so that the players can have a day off tomorrow. I would still have some concerns about Mack Hansen's availability for this game, although Andy Farrell did say he's confident that he will play. He's a young man. He is obviously healing as he goes this week, but a soft tissue injury in the course of 7 days between big international games is still a worry for me. Jimmy O'Brien is back fit. We've just found out that he's got an injury. Now, we saw him injure his shoulder. I think it was in the first warm-up game against Italy. He played against Samoa as well. But Andy Farrell said that he was carrying something for the first couple of weeks. But I guess, Cian, you were making the point before we come on, even the fact that we're only finding out about that now is that we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to injuries. James Ryan is the other headline. They expect him to be fit next week. They expect him, Earls and Robbie Henshaw to be fit next week. Now, whether that's fit for the first round of URC action or a World Cup semi-final, in fairness to Andy Farrell, he did use the word if a few times as he made that answer. They weren't getting ahead of themselves. But no one has been sent home. Everyone's been called up. And to name an unchanged team at this stage of the tournament is, on the face of it, a very positive development. We just hope that Mack Hansen's calf can recover, get through the captain's run on Friday, get through the warm-up and get through 80 minutes against the All Blacks. Okay, well, here is Andy Farrell on that. I asked him about Mack Hansen, and also later here's his answer on those other injury concerns.
Yeah, he obviously had a few things to do at the beginning of the week about his coming good, and everyone's very confident that he's going to be fine for the game, no problems. People have always got injuries and bangs and knocks, and at the start of the week there's always, is this going to turn around? And some turn around a lot quicker than you would expect, etc. So that's just rugby within a general week. So that it is what it is. And then as far as Keith Earls is concerned, it was a little bit too quick for him this week, so he'll get back to the rehab. We're very confident that if we push on through the competition, that he'd be fit for next week. Exactly the same with Robbie Henshaw, probably a little bit too soon, progressing very well, both of them. And James Ryan, he's out with a wrist injury that has been sorted. We expect him as well to be fit for next week if we're able to get that far.
What a booster would be, Cian, if Mack Hansen does start on Saturday?
I think we have to take it at face value that he is going to be starting. You had McCarthy on Monday, wasn't it, was up at media and said that himself and James Lowe were recovering well. I know you've just touched on it there that he wasn't training yesterday, unsure of how much training he did today. But I think the quote, what Andy Farrell said there was he hit all his markers. So we obviously don't know what those markers are. In the past, and I was making this point on our video this morning, Sinead, in the past, if a player missed the first training session of the week, the big training session of the week, that was enough to rule him out because they wanted to have build that continuity throughout the week. So I suppose the benefit of Ireland going so strong throughout the tournament and they have such a settled team is that maybe you can allow for someone to miss that big training. But it's very unclear of how much work he's done, but we certainly have to take Andy Farrell.
I don't think they're playing silly buggers with this. They obviously think he's going to play. I just think there's a lot of room for him to pull up or not make it back. And
if Jimmy O'Brien has to come on, that's one sub that you're doing without when the bench is going to be so important, I think, this weekend. So I think they're going to have to be sure that Mack Hansen is going to be able to get through at least 50, 55, 60 minutes before you kind of roll the dice, because it could easily backfire. But like Rod says, I mean, he's so important. I mean, it's obviously a massive boost for everyone, the supporters included, to see him named in the squad. I mean, like Henshaw's obviously missing, Earls, like Rod said, James Ryan fine. But my understanding is that James Ryan is back with the squad now.
Yeah.
He flew back in yesterday.
Had a procedure in Dublin.
Yeah, a little procedure. We could see it on the photo that was doing the rounds and WhatsApp groups and stuff. But it's great that he's back already. And like Andy Farrell said, you've just touched on, they hope that he'll be back for what they hope will be a big game next weekend. So that'll be a big boost as well.
This is where all the work around adversity comes in, because if Mack doesn't make it, then they just slip someone else in that they've
What
done
would
this
they do
before.
there, do you think?
I think Jimmy O'Brien will come onto the wing. Look,
Yeah.
he's ruled Earls and Henshaw out.
Yeah.
I think Earls was going to play. I think Earls was down to play. I think the plan this week was Earls would play. But Earls has pulled out, so they've had to get Hansen back on the pitch, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned. But Jimmy O'Brien will come in, and then Stuart McCluskey will go onto the bench.
Yeah.
McCluskey's unlucky. I thought
He
he did very
is
well last
unlucky,
weekend.
yeah.
I think it's
So why do they
partly
go
down
with-
to the pace and also
Yeah.
the concern. It's the
the
area
Mack.
of concern.
It's you can't. I think if you're starting Mack Hansen, you can't really not have a winger, because okay, they ended up with Gibson Park and Ringrose on the wings last weekend, but you do not want that to happen against the All Blacks.
And the pace of that midfield, when you've got Bundy and McCluskey went really, really well last weekend, but I think the pace of that midfield against the All Blacks would struggle. I think you need to have Ringrose in that 13 jersey. He's a key figure in terms of your defensive decision making as well. So I think that's part of it as well. We should talk about Joe McCarthy.
Yeah, I was
as well.
about to say, got ahead of Ryan Baird there, because we were mentioning that, that because Farrell mentioned him, didn't he?
Big
the
young
previous
Joe.
week, Big Young Joe.
Yeah, he is
BYJ.
big and he is young.
BYJ.
And he's experienced. Or sorry, he's inexperienced. But I mean, he must be training the house down if he's getting a nod for this game. And Baird, has never let Ireland down when he's been included. I think they see him more as a back row now. I think he's been squeezed out more probably by Jack Conan than by Joe McCarthy. He's unlucky. He started the Grand Slam game against England in the second row. But I mean, Cian, you've been writing with McCarthy for a while. He is a unbelievable young talent who the All Blacks probably don't know an awful lot about.
Yeah, I saw something interesting during the game last week, at halftime actually of the game last week, that really struck me as being unusual. And this was what we were talking about on the video as well, Sinead, this morning. This was why I kind of had a bit of a sense that he might go for Joe McCarthy, because on paper, I think you would go for Ryan Baird because he's played, like Rod said, in much bigger games. But at halftime during the match last week, all the players were in the dressing room. Well, from what we can tell anyways, in the Ireland players. And I mean the ones who weren't involved, the subs, the non-squad members, matchday squad members. And Ryan Baird was on the sideline filling water bottles down in front of the press box. And I mean, you could read too much into it, but at the time I was like, that's a bit unusual. He seemed to be the only guy who wasn't actually in the dressing room. And that made me think, okay, like if Joe McCarthy is in the thick of it, then maybe he is slightly nudged ahead of him. I mean, like I said, you could read too much into that, but it just struck me when I saw the team being named that did kind of pop into my head. So yeah, Joe McCarthy is, I mean, what an athlete. I think he seems to have matured a lot since the summer tour in New Zealand last year, where, look, he was a young guy. He was really over eager, I would say, at times to make an impression. His discipline was poor. He gave away a lot of silly penalties. And he's going to have to make sure he gets the pitch of that right, I think, as well, because like this is like nothing that he'll ever played. I thought he was really good in that Romania game, but this is comparing apples and oranges. I mean, an opening pool game against Romania compared to a New Zealand quarter-final. But like, he is a bit of an unknown quantity for the All Blacks, and they're going to roll probably, you'd think, Sam White.
That's what I was going to say. Like, he's coming up against the most capped All Black of all time, at the same time, same moment, he'd probably be coming in for maybe Ian Henderson or certainly Ty Byrne or even Peter O'Mahony if they want to move Byrne to 6. It gives them that luxury. What was that back row that started the first game?
Yeah,
wasn't O'Mahony,
Byrne,
O'Mahony and Doris. They've been prepping for this. This has been the game that they've been prepping for an awful long time. Maybe that's why they played McCarthy in that first game. Maybe that's that back row combination is something we'll see this weekend. I mean, I don't see Josh I think Josh Flannery is having a brilliant tournament, and if you look at the stats, he's hitting more rucks. He's the first arriver at more rucks than he's Ireland's most frequent first arriver at ruck. He's got a really important role. Quick ball is going to be really important. But my fear with Ireland this week, and I mentioned a couple of times, is that fatigue factor. We asked a couple of players about it today. They have, I don't know if you saw, but Russ Petty put out the stats for everyone's minutes in this tournament. More Irish players have played more high minutes in this tournament than anyone else. Joe McCarthy's coming in fresh. He's got massive energy. He's young. He's huge. Even the scrummaging in the second half, like when you're bringing on Finlay Bealham, I don't have concerns with Finlay Bealham necessarily. I think you weaponise Finlay Bealham if you put him into a scrum in the second half, or you put him behind Dave Kilcoyne, who is only getting 5 minutes per game. But if you're trying to get after the New Zealand scrum, we'll find out tomorrow if Tyrell Lomax is fit, whether they're going to be vulnerable in that area. There's a strategy behind this. I think McCarthy is built for Test rugby. It's just very soon in his career to be playing a World Cup quarterfinal against New Zealand.
You obviously think he's
but
ready.
This squad mentally, don't seem to have the hang-ups of old. And we'll find out on Saturday, but this is another suggestion that they're treating this as just another big game, that they can play a guy who has 4 caps, who's 22, 23 years old, who wasn't even involved in Leinster's end of season last year, really. He did play in that Munster quarter semi-final, and he actually played very well that day. He gave away a couple of penalties, but he brought great energy. Was he off the bench that day? I'm trying to remember. But he is a player that makes an impact, and he can have an impact on Saturday if he can just get to the pitch of it.
And I was just going to make that point. He is another one of these guys who don't have hang-ups. I mean, okay, he hasn't played against New Zealand before in his career, but I mean, like, I'm working on a piece at the moment that it's actually remarkable that there's so many guys in this squad who have beaten the All Blacks more than they've lost to them. Like, I think it gets overlooked a little bit that the changeover since 2019, because it's like Andy Farrell was still part of that coaching staff, the turnover of players though has been huge. Of course, you still have your likes of Peter O'Mahony or Johnny Sexton, Conor Murray, all these guys, but like off the top of my head, you've got Hugo Keenan, Caelan Doris, Stan Sheehan, Ronan Kelleher. Now you have Joe McCarthy, you've Jimmy O'Brien, and to me, like, their energy and fearlessness is going to be really important this week, because you'll have guys like Sexton, O'Mahony, who'll be able to bring them down and like let them know like what it's like to play in these games, you know, whereas they can also say, well, you know, we haven't lost in a World Cup quarter final before. We've beaten the All Blacks the whole time, and not in an arrogant way whatsoever. That's the reality of the situation that the Ireland squad are in at the moment. And I think that balance is what gives me more optimism than in the past, that you have those experienced guys and the younger guys who they just don't know what it's like to lose, really. Like 17 games in a row. I mean, a lot of them are coming from a Leinster setup where they've been really successful. You look at the Munster guys winning the URC.
More successful more recently,
yeah,
you
like
could argue.
There's huge momentum within this Ireland squad, and there's definitely a sense. We've spoke to Conor Murray there as well, and I had to kind of laugh to myself because, Rod, you'll remember this almost this time 4 years ago when we were in Tokyo ahead of the quarterfinal, and Conor Murray delivered this. Like, he's an
exceptional speaker.
Yeah, I was just chatting to one of our colleagues there about it. He is a brilliant talker, like really intuitive. Like, it's hardly a surprise, really.
Gives you something.
Yeah, it gives you something. But in 2019, after he did his press conference, I was like all in on that, you know, this is Ireland's time, but it feels a little more measured. But also there's a bigger body of work to suggest that this weekend can be different.
Well, the body of work 4 years ago was done. It was just done a year early. They felt like they were going on fumes at that point. And like, I remember being convinced by Johnny and Conor Murray in the build-up, and then going, hang on a second, it's just not there. And I did tip New Zealand to win it. I didn't expect the no-show that we got, but I did think that just New Zealand were timing their run much better. Sorry, my phone keeps falling down and disturbers. I hope it's okay, because I expect to have a few more weeks to go with this World Cup.
So do we.
Funny, I spoke to Steve Hansen this morning for a piece that we're running later in the week, you know, the coach that day, and you know, he spoke that day about the experience that Ireland had, and it kept getting referenced that Ireland have loads and loads of experience, but it's not good experience. It's experience of losing quarterfinals. And look, there are players there who have been through this before. You know, Conor Murray, Johnny Sexton. Oh, he didn't play in 15, but there's a number of players who go back to 11. I don't think that experience is going to be as relevant this week, and he doesn't either. I think Steve Hansen sees a difference in this Irish team that won, that he knew 4 years ago wasn't even just beginning to doubt itself. And we're going to have interesting stuff from Johnny Sexton later in the pod, Andy Farrell in tomorrow's papers about the mental challenge and how they feel more ready. Johnny talking about, and we're going to hear it now, don't want to, spoiler alert, but Johnny talking about how when he was growing up, he never dreamed of Ireland winning a World Cup because it was never a plausible reality. He's only a couple of years younger than me. Like, if you think of the World Cups that Johnny Sexton remembers growing up, you're talking about 95, you're talking about 99 going out before the quarterfinals even began, with that Argentina defeat in Lens. You're talking about 2003 when they ran Australia close but tanked against France in that quarterfinal. 07, you know, he was coming through as a player in 07. 07 was a disaster, didn't get out of the pool. You know, this is Ireland's rugby experience. But these young players that Keane's talking about, the Joe McCarthy's, don't really know much about that. We are coming into this quarterfinal on the back of record defeats at quarterfinals to Argentina in 15 and 19. And for all the caveats about injuries, they underperformed against Argentina. They should have been better that day. And 19, they just didn't show up. I don't think this team will no-show this week. I think we will get a performance. If it's enough, Will that be enough to beat the All Blacks? Certainly all the New Zealanders I've been listening to this week seem to think so. I thought Justin Marshall in last night's pod was very convincing when it came to Ireland winning the game.
Yeah, but
so
that's what they want
there is a
you
difference.
to like,
I don't think he's playing a game. I don't really think so.
I think it was interesting yesterday. There was so many little nuggets in the All Blacks press conference, and it was only kind of when I was listening back through it. Aaron Smith made a comment to a question about, the tour last year, and like he sang Ireland's praises, that he agreed that they're the benchmark, but he just made it like a subtle remark, but this is a World Cup. Like it felt pointed. They still believe that
I think they're talking themselves up. They're talking themselves into something. I think they're like Ireland 4 years ago. I think they've gone with a much different strategy in terms of the World Cup. They've had to, because of the way the fixtures rolled out, and they've built themselves up through 3 games that they've won really well. Now, Italy were poor, but New Zealand were very good that day. But compared to the games that Ireland have been through, they don't know. They're much less certain about their performance levels. Ireland know from the last 2 games that they can get to the pitch and they can throw everything at this. And look, if they lose to an 81st minute Richie Mwanga drop goal, then you shake hands, you leave. It's the performance, but that I want to see on Saturday. I think New Zealand are less certain about it. Like, we know they can deliver it. We know they're very good players, and they can be a very good team. And the first test is a major warning. But when I listen to them, it reminded me of Ireland 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not talking themselves up; it's talking themselves into a performance. Whereas Ireland, I think, know where they're at going into this game.
They've lost their last 2 big games, really. I know we've spoken about it. They just came off the plane in London when they played at Twickenham against South Africa, but that was like a humiliation, no matter what way you look at it. They lost comfortably enough to France, you'd have to say, and then they've just non-events since then. So I know you're slightly concerned, Rod, about the fatigue factor, and I do get
only
that.
Slightly, and I think they're managing the week much better. I think that's what they needed to do. It's not a disaster, but
But I would definitely take Ireland's position in terms of having that. Now, we could be sitting doing our pod afterwards and Ireland are out on their feet after 50 minutes. I just don't see that happening. And I would rather, when you look back, and particularly the last 2 World Cups, even though 2015 was a bit mad because of all the injuries, but I just admire the way Ireland have gone after it. They've recognised how important momentum is. They recognise how important finishing top of the pool is. And now they've doubled down on having such a settled team, which has to count for something.
Oh, well, no doubt they're ticking every box as they go along. You mentioned there the Johnny Sexton clip. Let's just hear from him now and how he feels things have changed since when he was a kid.
Like, trying to win a World Cup, it's something to go and get. It's not something that puts pressure on me. It's something that you dream of. Probably not as a kid, because when we were kids, we didn't dream of Ireland winning a World Cup. Where I suppose we put ourselves in a position now to go and do that. But it's something to go and get. It's not something to be pressured about. And I haven't thought about my own career, to be honest. I'll think about it more when I finish. But it's all geared up towards a massive game on Saturday, massive challenge for this team, the biggest we've faced, and we're looking forward to it.
I think we got a glimpse into how Andy Farrell deals with adversity as well in that press conference. It was a bit of a funny press conference. No one else will care about this, but there were audio issues. There were camera operators at the back of the press conference room because it was a full room. There was loads of journalists from New Zealand. And there was a bit of an audio issue.
There was a bit of humanity in the way that they dealt with it. Like, I thought Johnny Sexton was getting really annoyed with the fact that his mic kept popping.
I thought he was going to throw it off the wall at one point.
Yeah, he was looking at the press officer, giving him the kind of look that he gives you when you don't catch his pass. Poor old Peter Breen was getting that, and then Andy Farrell just stepped in and goes, "What do you think, guys? Will I get rid of this?"
Yeah,
and everyone kind of nodded.
Let's hear from Andy now and how he kind of dealt with it.
Do you think we should turn this off? Should I make that decision? Is this off as well?
No, just big hands. There's interference.
If you like holding it, you can use it. If you like holding it, you can use it.
I do like holding it.
Again, the jokes and everything. I mean, this is just Andy Farrell and how
But
he
even
deals with
listening to the
things.
way Johnny Sexton answered that question, and we had a lot of questions from New Zealand journalists. There's no New Zealand media today. It meant the entire New Zealand press pack, pretty much, apart from, I didn't see the Herald there, but pretty much everyone else came along, and there was a lot of questions with New Zealand accents and a lot of kind of pointed ones about the rivalry and stuff. And I thought the way Johnny Sexton handled that particular one was really interesting and deep and relaxed and calm. And I think it maybe gave a window into the way Andy Farrell is framing the week in terms of why Ireland are ready to do it this time. That in the past, Irish teams couldn't handle this week, that they couldn't handle the pressure, that, as Johnny Sexton said, they didn't truly believe because they'd grown up seeing failure. They have to prove it. We can't, get ahead of ourselves. Saturday could be an absolute disaster. It could be all talk. But everything we've seen them do, as they go through this almost a record 17 game, certainly an Irish record 17 game winning streak, doing what they did in New Zealand, all of that stuff does count for something this week, and it does feel different, and I get a very relaxed sense, and you also get a little window into the dynamic between Sexton and Farrell and the co-managers.
They're a real double act, because usually it's Andy Farrell who's kind of slagging Johnny at the top table, just like whatever funny little bits, but this time it was Johnny Sexton. I think what did he say? You love the microphone, don't you? And Andy Farrell said, I do actually, yeah.
We got the guitar out.
But it is, I mean, I don't want to look back to previous years, but we've been in enough press conferences, all three of us. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would have driven the previous head coach absolutely bananas, whereas Andy Farrell just kind of laughs it off, and
remember there was a typo on the team sheet.
Yes, I remember.
There was a typo. I think it was, I can't remember what it was. It was Peter O'Mahony. There was an apostrophe missing or something, and he just looked at the press officer.
He made such a big deal of it.
He made such a big deal. He humiliated the poor guy, and that was kind of the high tension, high stakes kind of environment. You could feed off the energy. The energy was in the room, whereas Johnny was getting really annoyed today. Farrell wasn't happy either, because in fairness, it's a World Cup quarter final. The audio should work in the press conference, and that doesn't affect. We get the stuff anyway, but it affects the kind of their enjoyment of it and that sort of stuff. And they were getting distracted, but Farrell diffused it very, very well. Took control of the situation. Small thing, not a factor of Saturday. We're not trying to overplay
huge
it.
Adversity.
But look, the guy's able to think on his feet. He's able to just take command of a room. It showed a bit of the charisma that you can see.
Yeah.
Himself and Gary Keegan, I think, are working overtime this week, and he even talked about the fact that he's working with Gary Keegan, that he's questioning himself and making sure that he's getting things right through this tournament, because it would be easy to sail out of the Stade de France with Zombie in your earphones or singing on the bus and think everything's perfect, but they're not doing that either. They keep saying that they need to get better, and it's not just on the pitch, it's off the pitch as well, and that's why you can probably hear from us. I think everyone's feeling good about this weekend in terms of the Irish performance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, just a little earlier today, I spoke with former Ulster flanker Sean Reidy. He won 2 caps for Ireland under Joe Schmidt, and he was born New Zealand, qualified to play for Ireland through his Kerry-born grandfather.
He's a Kerry connection.
It is
Castle Gregory, isn't it?
It is Castle Gregory,
yeah.
But he's back in Auckland now. So spoke to him a little earlier about what the vibe is like in New Zealand ahead of this weekend's game.
Yeah, it's a funny one, to be honest to you, because I don't feel like everyone's talking about rugby as much as previous World Cups. I think everyone's the expectations aren't as high maybe as previous World Cups, because I remember being back here for the 2011 World Cup, and it's obviously it was here, but all you'd hear, everyone you're down at the coffee shop, it's everyone would talk about. But yeah, look, I think the All Blacks know that it's going to be a tough game. There's a big challenge ahead of them. But yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Is there the same kind of certainty and confidence in this All Blacks team as there would have been in the past? I suppose, especially after Ireland beat them in this series last year.
Yeah, well, I'm not against it. I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. But look, everyone knows the strength Ireland are possessing at the moment. Got a team who are pretty well seasoned now and played a lot of minutes together. So, yeah, I think All Blacks will realise the challenge that's ahead of them. I think the pack is going to be pretty good up front. Ireland have a pretty strong pack. So I think if you like Artie, Sarver, Sam Kane and Bristella, if they turn it on, we're going to be in for a real doozer of a game.
Do you think the All Blacks will go after the Irish line-out? It did go well last time against Scotland, but was a bit shaky at the start against South Africa.
Oh, 100%. Every team, I'd say those key line-out leaders, that will be their focus this week. Because if you can disrupt set piece, your scrum or your line-out, then that's at least 5 or 10 minutes you don't have to defend. You can get the ball back faster, you can put them on a lot more pressure. So it's actually an easy way if you can really put a lot of emphasis on disrupting that line out, just not even taking the line out, but giving them poor quality ball. It goes a long way to you being on the front foot.
Yeah, and I suppose after Ireland beat New Zealand last year, is there a new kind of found respect, do you feel, in New Zealand for the Irish rugby team?
Oh, I think the respect's always been there. You wouldn't believe how many Irish people live in New Zealand or are from Irish descent. I was just down at the Irish Business Association talk last week, and it was just awesome to see all the people that have come over here and made lives of themselves. So I think the respect's always been there because a lot of us Kiwis come from have family members or have migrated up to New Zealand over the little last while. So, but yeah, I think on the rugby field, the respect's definitely there now. So I don't think the All Blacks will be taking this one lightly. And it's a quarter final. Anything can happen, can't it?
Yeah, of course. And we know Ireland's history in when it comes to World Cup finals, quarterfinals. You mentioned the back row there. Have you been impressed with how the Irish back row has gone in this tournament?
Oh, 100%. I've been impressed the last few years, to be honest with you. I just think they click quite well together and they complement each other quite well. But to be honest, I've been pretty impressed with the pack as a whole. Like they're really setting the platform for the backs to do some dangerous stuff out wide. If the pack's not going forward, then the backline, Bundy, Arkey, and those guys can't crash onto the ball and get the go forward that they want. It's a lot tougher, you know. So it starts up front, and I think they've done a pretty good job so far. But I think the All Blacks will try and negate that a little bit.
And your old Ulster teammate, Ian Henderson, he started against Scotland and he's become such a leader in this Irish team, hasn't he?
Oh, 100%. Hendy's always been a leader, you know. Ever since I've known him, he's been one people to look to for inspiration or motivation or help or whatever that may be. So it's awesome to see people actually recognising that. It's awesome to see a few. I'm actually pretty close friends with Rob Herring and Stu McCusker as well. So it's awesome to see them in the squad and do some pretty awesome stuff as well. So it's cool to see.
So what way do you see it going this weekend?
Personally, I believe Ireland will win. I think it'll be a tight game, to be honest with you. Probably 12 and under. Like all quarterfinals are, not many of them blow out. So, but I'm confident in Ireland, you know. They've got the firepower there. They've got the pack up front, and I think if they do a job up front, then the backs can really light it up and get things going. So, I've got no doubt. I think Ireland will win this.
Cian, you were just saying to us there, a lot more journalists from New Zealand covering this compared to when you covered the tour last year.
Like, I don't have the data to sum it up or anything, but I was struck last summer by like how few kind of journalists were on the beat for what was such a huge tour. Now I know there's been loads of like different cutbacks and things like that, but it was such a small press pack. But yesterday when we went to the All Blacks press conference, there was people working there, and maybe they've just gotten jobs since, but I didn't see them covering the tour. Like, I'm saying this, by the way, in a brilliantly positive way, and I suppose the way we all kind of rocked up to the All Blacks presser yesterday, they did the same today. But you can see, I mean, you get a sense of it. You've both been there. The New Zealand media are different in that. I think Conor Murray was the one who touched on it, that they're harsher, they're heavier. When Ireland lost the third test, when Ireland won the third test, it was front page news, it was back page news 2 days after they'd won. So like, there's a huge deal. Like, I mean, even I was talking to one particular New Zealand journalist, and I was saying, you know, are you going to go to the South Africa-France game on Sunday? And he's kind of like, well, a lot depends on what happens on Saturday, because if Ireland win, like, it will be meltdown situation back in New Zealand. I mean, for all that Ireland won the tour, if New Zealand were to be knocked out at a World Cup quarter-final, and didn't someone ask at the press conference yesterday, he said statistically they would
You'd be the worst All Black team. Yeah, a direct question to all three people at the press conference.
And in fairness, they answered it.
Yeah.
They did, because I actually I signed up for their channel last night, because they've done a documentary about the 2022 season. It starts with the Ireland tour, and then it goes to how they bounce back in a sense, and it's kind of behind the scenes. It's made by NZR, I think, with Rugby Pass, but it's not bad. But but the one thing that shone through was the pressure, and just knowing even the way Ian Foster talks about this, the privilege of being an All Blacks coach, but what it means and when it goes wrong. And even talking to Steve Hansen this morning, he was like, you know, I don't want to give the piece away, but he was kind of talking about that chokers tag that he talked about with Ireland last year. He goes, when we were losing games, people call us chokers, and we were, because that's what New Zealand expects of its team. And Ireland are getting a flavour of that now, because the Irish media I don't think the whole thing is set up really for the level of interest there is back home. I think I think Ireland need to kind of almost get an All Blacks mentality to the way they're approaching this thing. It's the biggest story.
Yeah.
It's bigger than the budget. Like it's like the number of people come into their press conferences, even the stuff earlier on that wouldn't happen in All Black stuff. They're used to being the front runners. They're used to being the centre of attention. If England go out at the weekend and Ireland are still here, there's going to be 100 people at the press conference next week. It's going to be huge, and that's what comes. It's questions from all countries of the world. When you're the front runner, people are sniping at you from the side, like Rassie Erasmus and Ian Foster. It's all part of it. Ireland have to learn to deal with it, not just the team and the management, every part of the RFU, because suddenly you are the big deal, and this is the only show in town this autumn.
Yeah, well, up with the big boys now as well, as Andy Farrell said today. Just before we go, the Left Wing live show coming to the 3 Olympia Theatre on the 19th of October. Go to ticketmaster.ie for more details. We are going to head to New Zealand Team Hotel tomorrow. That's where we're going to be doing our podcast from. They're naming their team at 7 o'clock French time.
Yeah,
is that
6
right?
Irish tomorrow.
Yes.
So they're almost the last possible moment, which I think is more in keeping with their deadline, their time zones, rather than the fact that they're waiting until the last available time. But
gives Lomax extra time as well to prove.
So you're not kind of sure if he will start.
Well, I was chatting to. I obviously have absolutely no insight into the fitness of Tyrrell Lomax. Only that I was talking to Kiwi journalists, but they were less convinced of Jason Ryan's kind of positive. I mean, it doesn't just happen in Ireland. Every kind of coach does it. They were just making a point that like it was a medial knee ligament, and
his
that
second one in a row as well.
Yeah, and it's a very short turnaround. So look, he'd be a huge boost if he's in the team, but certainly the Kiwi journalists who I was speaking to were less convinced that he's going to be fit.
He's not a household name, but he is one of the people that Ian Foster has brought in to bolster. That's like their tight 5 was destroyed by Ireland in the series. Maybe destroyed is a bit strong, but it was dominated by Ireland. Him and Ethan de Groot, the two props, have been brought in. They've made a big difference to this team. I think he played in the Mary games last summer, but he will be a big loss because you're back to the players that played in that series who have a lot of scar tissue, and one of the big shifts that they've made in the time since will be gone. So that will be a big factor.
Our colleagues there looking over at us.
Harry
Is
Murphy
it
from
time for us?
Sportsfile, who's got the best tash in the business. Big
And
fan
Mack
of the pod as
Hansen
well.
taking a picture. See you in a while, lads. So obviously Friday, lads, is going to be a big one as well. Captain's run. There's no training. There's no media on Thursday. They kind of did a lot more stuff today. And I suppose then that's when we'll see Mack again. That we want to see him obviously on the pitch for the
All
captain's
eyes on
run
the
on
captain's
Friday.
run. I think it's 10 o'clock on 9 o'clock Irish time. We'll get the next update.
We'll be out there.
Keane will be keeping his ear to the ground.
Yeah.
I will do.
Absolutely.
As always.
As always. So we'll be back tomorrow evening. We will come to you from the New Zealand Team Hotel after they name their team on Thursday tomorrow. Thanks for watching.